News this week that small boat migrants have already topped 10,000 this year alone. And of course, those in the Conservative Party who don't think it matters will tell you, well, it's only a tiny number. It's only 10,000. Well, it's a big number if you've got a house and you've got 10,000 people hanging around outside it waiting to get in. That's a big number. 10,000 is a lot of people. It's half the capacity of Stamford Bridge, Chelsea's football ground, practically, for heaven's sake. Britons to be priority on council house lists is what it says on the front page of the Times. I find this astonishing. Why should it be a front page news story? Because it turns out that Britons are not priority on council house lists. Let's talk now to Jeremy Hutton from Migration Watch and see if he can tell us why. Jeremy, very good morning to you.
Good morning, Mike. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, thanks very much indeed for talking to us. I know that we're going to talk about the numbers game in a moment and the numbers of people coming. It looks like it's over 10,000 already. We know that the migrant barge off the coast of Dorset will be ready for service pretty soon, but there's issues around that as well. But what about this Britons to be priority on council house list story? I find it staggering that that should even be news. You know, what the hell are they doing, these council house people?
It is incredible, really, that it doesn't seem that that was the default position.
Right.
I mean, I'm sure there are some councils that were doing the sensible thing and making sure that British people who needed social housing were prioritised for it, but I'm sure there were others out there where there were do-gooders who thought, OK, here's an asylum seeker who's just come across in a small boat. Let's make sure they get the first house available. Meanwhile, there are British people, of course, who might end up homeless on the street or forced into overcrowded housing themselves. And it's those people who've been paying taxes for years as well. It's utterly farcical, and I think it's extremely embarrassing that for the government, this story has been so heavily highlighted. Right. And I think they should be quite embarrassed over the current turn in the past few days as to the state of the Channel crossings as well.
Well, if you look at some of these numbers here in the Times, in Brent, northwest London, 40% of new social homes were let to non-UK citizens in 21 and 22. In Southwark, the proportion was 29%. In Oxford, 26%. In Milton Keynes, 23%. Other places included Manchester, Coventry and Birmingham, with relatively high levels of rental properties going to foreigners. I mean, there's an awful lot of people homeless in this country. We're going to talk later on in the show about Prince William, who wants to house many of those by building social housing on his own land. But, you know, the priorities, it seems to be, in this country are all wrong.
Absolutely. Those numbers that you just outlined will shock and appall everyone that's listening, I would have thought. The UK is in the midst of a really quite dramatic housing crisis, and people up and down the country are either suffering homelessness as a result, or they're struggling to pay their bills, and we can't get enough houses built to actually fit the scale of migration at the moment. So unless we actually have a complete step change in policy to reduce immigration and to ensure that we can actually home everyone that wants to live in the country, then the problem is only going to get much, much worse.
Yes, absolutely right. The Labour Party don't seem to have any answers for this problem either. Keir Starmer's up in Scotland at the moment, in Edinburgh, making a speech about cutting bills and creating jobs and providing energy security. But he hasn't got anything to say very much or very often about immigration, has he?
No, we're not terribly impressed at the Labour Party's policies. They're making some good noises in some areas. So I think they've endorsed the government's line on postgraduate students, for instance, and they've said something good about visa requirements. But ultimately, it's all tinkering around the edges, and their approach to illegal migration won't make a jot of difference. They're showing extreme reluctance to do anything about that, and I think that's because ultimately there's two sides of voters to the Labour Party. You've got the old school Labour voter, you know, maybe sometimes called blue Labour, for instance, red wall voters, who might have trade unionist backgrounds and just want to see the deal for their family improved. And then you've got the other sort of Islington set, whose main priority is poor people on faraway shores. They really prioritise the people who are actually trying to come to Britain, not the people who are already here. And unless the Labour Party actually works out which side of its voter base it wants to satisfy, this is going to be a chronic issue, and they're not going to solve the issue unless they sort that paradox out.
No, exactly right. Meanwhile, we see that 2,375 people have made their crossing across the Channel in the past week in 46 different boats, and it means basically the numbers are near where they were last year, which is not down 20%, which is what Rishi Sunak was suggesting, but basically 10,000 people had crossed the Channel by June the 2nd last year. Looks like we're about the same now.
Yeah, if you look at just the second quarter so far, comparing it with last year, we're only down 6%. Which is, not particularly impressive. And that 6% we can probably just allot to a reduction in Albanians. I think the best the government's probably hoping for at this point is matching last year's numbers, because we're surely going to see another summer influx of significant numbers, and we don't actually know if the Albanian crossings have been fully deterred yet, because apparently a few more have started coming across in this second quarter. So the summer will tell, and I don't think we're going to reach the earlier forecast for this year. I think the Home Office was saying 65,000 at one point.
Yeah.
We're probably going to be lower than that, but we're still going to be a very high number. And frankly, even if it's matching the 2021 figure, it's still far too many. That's still tens of thousands of people who are
this is the thing.
illegally coming into the UK.
And also the idea that somehow Rishi Sunak has stopped 20% of the crossings just by the power of his own personality. You just kind of go, sorry, I don't really believe you, I'm not really buying it. And it turns out probably that it isn't true anyway. But most of the young Albanian men coming here are coming here illegally because they want to come illegally, because many of them have been deported once already. And so they're coming here to be part of a criminal enterprise. They're hardly likely to just go, oh, righto, so apparently it's illegal now, so I'm not going to come.
I imagine one of the differences we'll see coming later this year is because now they know that if they are intercepted, they will be deported more quickly than before, and less likely to put up in a hotel. I think you'll probably see them trying harder not to be intercepted in the first place and just getting onto the beaches of Dover, maybe meeting up with a mate in a car or catching a quick bus and just going hell for leather so that they don't get intercepted by the police and the Home Office.
Yes, exactly right. So, I mean, as far as the weather is concerned, it's really the only thing that stops them, isn't it? If the weather turns and the tides turn, then suddenly they don't come for a while, but basically everything else enables them to do so.
Yes, I've been keeping a close eye on the channel forecast, and certainly that period when there were no crossings, the weather was very clearly bad, and it didn't take a particularly well-educated person to see why no one was making it across the channel. Looking at the next, the rest of the month, really, the weather's looking pretty calm, and I think we can expect to probably beat last year's record for June quite easily.
Yeah, and that's not something we should really be looking forward to, I don't think. Jeremy, thank you very much indeed. Jeremy Hutton there from Migration Watch, talking about the state of play when it comes to the numbers coming here illegally. Small boat migrants top 10,000 people this year already, pretty much the same as last year.